Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Matt, and I'm on the consultancy team at BlueVenn. And as part of my role, I work with lots of different businesses to show them around the solution and discuss how it can meet their current and future business needs. Now, BlueVenn as a solution is more than just a customer data platform, performing not just the necessary functions that you require to have from an actual CDP. The whole idea of unifying your customer data, creating that single customer view. But then BlueVenn is also providing a highly unique approach to data analysis and segmentation and audience creation through the unique drag and drop UI that we're going to be looking at as part of today's session. Then there's also the ability to actually connect to all of your online and offline marketing channels, giving you a single point of control and coordination, allowing you to become truly omnichannel across all of your customer journeys and all of your campaigns. So today's webinar is going to last around 30 minutes, and it's really intended as a high-level overview of the solution while providing insight into some of the possibilities that the solution can provide for you and for your organization. Now, as we go through the session, if you have any questions, please pop those into the GoToWebinar technology that we're presenting in today. Any that we don't get a chance to get to as part of the session, we're going to cover on a one-to-one basis over email straight after the session today. Now, before we begin, I'd really like to actually give a big shout out to the incredibly exciting announcement that came out last week that BlueVenn is now part of the Upland software family. Now, the Upland portfolio of products is used by a variety of businesses across a range of verticals, but the simplest way to understand the entire organization is that there are four key areas: customer experience management, enterprise sales and marketing, document workflow, and project and IT management. Now, Upland Software was founded just over a decade ago. We're a publicly traded company with nearly $300 million in annual revenue and growing at over 30% year on year. Today, we have over 10,000 customers and almost 1 million users across 94 different countries. And BlueVenn is going to be joining the Upland Customer Experience Management area of the organization, or Upland CXM as we refer to it. Now, Upland CXM is one of our larger business units and is focused on helping our customers deliver experiences that people really want and value. So this is across SMS, mobile, email, and web. We have a portfolio of execution channels that have been delivering decades of value to customers. And now, with the BlueVenn CDP sitting at the center of Upland CXM's product portfolio, customers will have the power to fully accelerate customer engagement on all of the channels that matter most to their business. Now, with all that said, before we jump into the technology and start to take a look around, we're first going to look at a couple of the key things that all organizations require from a CDP and marketing automation solution, whether they're operating in the B2C, B2B, or B2B2C space. So, put simply then, talk about key challenges. The number of data sources and the channels used by different organizations, as we're all aware, is rapidly expanding. This can be seen in lots of different ways when we look at different organizations and the way customers are able to interact with them. And when we put this into the language of marketers, this means that marketers are having to spend a lot of time digging through ever-increasing numbers of data sources before they're able to answer really, really simple questions. And they've also got to spend a lot of time after they've gone through getting all of the data, massaging it and getting their insights, to actually be able to manage the plethora of channels that they actually have access to as well. Now, a CDP seeks to remove or at least greatly reduce these problems by unifying the many disparate relationships a business has with its customers. And these issues are split into two areas that we can see on screen, centered around data and channels. So let's take a look first at data. So the list on the screen that we have here is really representing the most common data sources that we see. Now, obviously, this isn't an exhaustive list, and it's going to vary by vertical and by business model. But in essence, it's not the business that decides how the customer interacts, it's the customer's decision. And this list gives you an idea of all of those different data sources, the data types, and those different interactions that we're coming across on a regular basis. But the key point to note here is that these critically important data elements, they're all of this core information that businesses have, all of that personal information, the customer attributes, the facts, the descriptors, the behaviors, all of the historical interactions. They exist in many different locations and lots of different products all around the organization. But when you think about it, for every operation and every touch point that an organization has, there exists a disconnected platform designed to manage a specific number of processes. Those processes have their own data, their own method of structuring and storing the data, their own way of identifying the different individual customers, and their own way of allowing users to get access to that information. What this means is that all the information required to answer those simple questions we were talking about earlier is all disconnected. It's duplicated across all of these different platforms. It's not something that can be easily referenced or used within a single location without a significant level of effort. And in many cases, that effort isn't something that's easily automated. It typically ends up being a very manual process. So the first core competency then of a CDP is to connect all of your data sources together in that coherent, trustworthy, and accurate way, creating that single customer view, giving the business that holistic view of the customer, their behaviors, their experiences, and all of their interactions as well. In essence, the CDP's sort of primary reason to really exist is to unify, clean, deduplicate, and manage all of that relevant customer data into that single source of the truth, creating that full 360-degree view of the customer experience really allows for users to create things like cross-system metrics, analyze data that span lots and lots of different systems, really allowing them to become far more in tune and understand their customers a lot better. This ranges from basic marketing needs, things like having accurate data, being able to create accurate, simple selections, basic targeting, just simple things like easy visualization and reporting, but also underpins the more sort of aspirational elements that a lot of businesses have. Advanced behavioral analytics, for example. Things like advanced segmentation, predictive modeling, machine learning, things like next best action and advanced product recommendations. So with the data problem solved then, let's take a look at that second challenge that I mentioned as well, that idea of the number of channels. So for every marketing channel that an organization has, and that it's using to engage those customers as well, much like the data sources, there's a disparate product designed to manage those different interactions. Organizations that we talk to typically change different channel products. Perhaps you're planning within your organization to change email service provider or swap to a different SMS gateway or look at onboarding a new app, for example. It's clear, throughout this, there's an ever-changing landscape of execution channels that is always moving around that marketers have to face and have to be comfortable within. Now, each channel interaction, in much the same way as the data source side of an organization, is managed in a different way. All of the different data is stored in different ways. All of the customers are identified in different ways by different primary keys, for example. You can make all of the different decisions within the channels, whether that's through different decisioning tools, different skill sets, for example. And the big thing here is that this is all about being able to give marketers the power to actually be able to get into those channels and actually start to be able to make impacts on things like marketing performance, revenue, and all of the other KPIs for an organization that they're going to be caring about. So what we have with the BlueVenn solution is we're strategically fulfilling the second part of this key marketing objective then. That second core competency is really around being able to connect all of those inbound data flows and the outbound channels together to provide a single decisioning point for marketers as well. Really allowing the organization to be able to do lots and lots of different things. And we can see from that list here, single point to make all those decisions, be able to manage all of those different omni-channel journeys, automate the activation of the channels from a single central point, and be able to do this at real time based upon the data flows and automate those data flows to different areas of the organization as those data flows are required throughout the business. So essentially then, what we're looking at here through the two core competencies is that BlueVenn is bringing together the fundamental needs of a real CDP and a true omni-channel marketing automation platform with all of the analytics capabilities that marketers need. And we refer to this approach as X1X, X number of data sources into a single data layer, a single decision layer out to X number of channels, omni-source and omni-channel at the core. Now, with that said, let's just take a moment, step out of the slides, and I'll swap some screens over and we can jump straight into the actual product and we can start to have a little bit of a look around from here as well. Now, everything we have is completely web-based. It's a complete drag and drop UI, so there's no need for code or anything else. There's a range of different dashboards, as you can see here, allowing you to look at not just high-level summary metrics that we have, things like sends, deliveries, opens, conversions, and ROI, different time filters, for example, different ways to actually present the data depending upon how we want to visualize that information. But we also have access to every single piece of granular data contained within that single customer view. In this particular demonstration example, this is my SCV that I have access to here. Throughout the platform, I have the option to be able to utilize different areas where I can start to look at manipulating data, creating bandings and derived fields, adding in my own empirical knowledge into the solution as well, meaning I don't have a need for a data classification dictionary. I have analysis tools, I can build out campaigns, I can build out predictive models, and I can also start to look at all my data through the reporting side of the solution as well. But to start off with then, I just want to just take you through some basic ideas around the analytics side of things and look at how the solution is able to help organizations solve some of the common problems that they have. So in this particular case here, we could start to look at things such as, for example, we could start to question things like loyalty. So we can start to say, actually, I want everyone that has made a purchase, in this case in 2019, everyone that's done exactly the same thing in 2020, and then also made a purchase in 2021 as well. This is giving me 296,451 loyal customers that fall at the central intersection of my Venn diagram. I've got customers that have newly acquired in 2020 and 2021 who have a level of repeat purchase. And then I also have customers here who have 51,647 who have actually not purchased in 2020, but have purchased in 2019 and 2021 as an example. Now, this is just a really quick way that the solution can help users actually get access to their data here through the granular text search functionality, call up any number of data fields that they require and drag those out. You can also take this, and again, another step further, where we can actually say, well, we've got this view of our loyal customers at the top of our screen here. What happens if we want to start to look at our data in another way? So we can start to look at things like age bands, for example, so I can drag and drop those out in this particular case. But I might want to start to look at things like occupation, for example, as well. This is where we can start to utilize things like third-party data as well as our first-party data and the different categorizations that we've built up of our own first-party data to create a completely different view of the customer records that we have. Now, what I want to do here is I want to understand this group of loyal customers here by age and by occupation. Very easily, it's just a drag and drop between the two visualizations, allowing me to sort of formulate my thoughts in one type of visualization, transpose that onto another, for example. If I just pop this one up full screen as well so we can get a really good view. There are also other ways I can choose to present this data, whether I want to present this as different grids, for example. I might want to overlay heat maps onto this. I might also actually want to express this as a chart, for example, rather than actually expressing this as a grid. Just lots into different things like management reports. The list goes on and on and on here. It's all about meeting the different business needs and not being stuck in a single particular way of working. Now, everything we've looked at so far, for example, we're actually seeing here that this is all just numbers. Where are the people that sit behind this? Who are those 7,448 31 to 40-year-old office workers that we have here? And that's a really good question. The first thing we want to be able to do is just select those and actually pull them out here. And by pulling them to the bottom here, we're going to see a couple of different things come up on screen. We have the ANSI 92 compliant SQL syntax at the top here. So anyone who is on the more technical side of an organization, whether you're lucky enough to have someone that can write code within your marketing team, or you have someone in IT that you can rely on, they're able to use this as a technical audit trail, or they can directly edit that syntax if they prefer to work that way. Great way to sort of check and balance and bridge the gap between the sort of more visual drag and drop marketers and the technical teams. But we can also get access to the granular data that underpins every single selection that we have here as well. So you'll see I've got email addresses, first names and surnames, for example. I can create different, what we call field lists, so different data visualizations. So in this case here, I've got personalized views. So I've got preferred email address, things like marital status, behavioral interests from our demonstration database here. Now, this is all great, but you're looking as well, the fact that I can actually visualize PII, or personally identifiable information within the product, because I have, as you can see at the top right, administrator level privileges, as you would expect as part of a demonstration system. Now, if I was working within an organization and I was worried about making sure that only the right people are able to see personally identifiable information or other different sensitive forms of data, this is where we can actually choose to do things such as you see here. In this case, we've retained first name and surname as part of the session, but you'll see here I've obfuscated the email addresses. This is great if we've got staff who need to be able to actually pull up particular records. All of that obfuscated data is still queryable, but it's something they're just not able to see through the front-end UI. So when we talk about compliance, we'll see when we get into the other side of the solution as well, we can look at how the solution is helping from that side of things. Like I said, again, also through that front-end user interface, maintaining organizations' compliance right across the board with all of the different regulations like GDPR and CCPA as examples as well. Now you'll see here I've used one particular workflow to be able to jump across vens, pivots, or come into these different selections, for example here. There are also ways that we can also combine different, what we call selection elements, different queries, different campaign steps, dynamic steps, geographic elements, with all of these different logical operators in more of a tree format as well, if we wanted to go down that route. Everything that we're actually using as well is also savable. So we have a folder structure here that we can then choose exactly how this is actually being shared and who this is being shared with right across an organization as well. So all data access is controlled here. But the other thing we're also able to do, it's not just about visualizing counts and looking at customer data. It's also about being able to then jump into sort of geographic visualizations of data as well. So in this case, this is a UK-based database, so hence why I only have UK data here. But this is allowing me to really move into that sort of thematically shaded heat map of a particular territory using latitudes, longitudes, postcodes, and zip codes, and all of that data that we're collecting within an organization as well, or is being appended from our third-party data sources. And by getting into this geographic visualization as well, we're able to understand if these 7,448 individuals in our particular segment, how many of those individuals live in sort of central southwest London, for example, giving us a highly localized, hyper-targeted audience or segment that we may want to go after. And this is great if we're looking at doing things in the retail space when everything starts to open up after the current pandemic, when we're looking at citing things like temporary pop-up stores, for example. We're looking at different events. We're looking at dragging people in who are very local, where we've got, let's say, tickets to sell out for sort of last minute bookings. The list kind of really goes on and on and on. We've seen clients use this for helping cite things like out of home advertising, for example. Like I said, it's a very, very long list of different ways that this allows organizations to get into the specifics of their customer data and explore this as well. But the great other thing we have here as well is because, as I said, the solution is giving us a central place to manage the coordination of all our campaigns. At any point, we can very easily jump to the top here and say, actually, take this particular segment, this particular audience, for example, and jump straight across into actually building a particular campaign or a particular customer journey. Now, in this case here, I actually have my audience. I can also, again, expose that underlying syntax if I wanted to go down that route. But I can also start to use what we have here from our journey planning tools, where we can start to actually get into the specifics of just doing something simple like deploying a communication, for example, here. Now, for anyone familiar with journey planning tools, you'll start to recognize this kind of interface, this node-based workflow style interface. But there are a couple of really key differences when we're starting to talk about the activation of channels. Now, this is a communication step. It's not just an email. If we look at this particular drop down here, you'll see that we have the ability to control, like I said, any connected online and offline channel all from this particular screen. giving us control over things like our app push, for example, real-time website personalization, things like pushing callback requests to contact centers, contact requests to sales teams in their CRM, audiences out to DMPs, using different email tools, whether that's using the built-in email capability or whether that's using connectors to systems like Adestra, for example, pushing data out to different social channels like Facebook, Google, Instagram, Twitter, connecting out to all of the different SMS platforms as well, looking at integrating with VOC systems, things like Localytics, for example. The list really goes on and on and on because we have all of these connectors. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take email as a really, really simple example. We're just going to grab up email. We're going to pull up a particular creative that we want to use. We're going to set all of these different attributes that we have here, things like unsubscribe groups and from addresses. And all I need to do now is be able to actually send this is to save and hit send. Before I do that, I can choose to get into the forecasting and the scheduling. I can choose to look at the dashboards that I have within these particular campaigns as well. So I have lots of other planning tools at my disposal. But the solution is not just allowing you to actually activate data and be able to send out broadcast messages. That's kind of a fairly simple thing to be able to achieve. What we're also able to do here is through all of the different connectors that we have to all of these different channel specific systems, is being able to take things like response data, for example, here. And again, I'm keeping this as an example sort of fairly simple for now. Well, what we have here is this particular email communication. It's going to go out the door. Anybody that doesn't respond within a particular time frame, so let's say in this particular case here, anybody that doesn't respond within a day, this is where we're going to choose to serve them up advertising on a social channel. So in this case, we'll choose to use Facebook, and we can personalize that interaction and those experiences through Facebook as well, using the data that we pass up to that channel. But that's great if we want to be reactive to how the customer is engaging and look to nudge them back to their inbox. But what about being proactive? How can we actually take a step and move the journey forward? This is where we can start to use things like AI, machine learning, and predictive modeling. And we can start to do things such as using different prediction models, different automated clustering models, and even bringing in external modeling outputs from other sort of statistical modeling platforms that advanced data science teams may be using. We can choose which models we're actually going to use for things like next best action, for example. We'll take a high value customer propensity one as a simple example for today's session. Find everyone that has an over 80% likelihood to be high value. And in this particular case here, they're going to come out of this top node. So this is where I might want to choose to do different things, change up my marketing engagement, where I want to start adding an experiential element to the different campaigns and to the different interactions I'm using. So in this particular case here, I might actually choose to say, well, everyone with a high likelihood, I know I get a really, really good hit rate with my direct mail. So in this particular case here, we could choose to actually say, well, let's just name this. Let's just give that a quick name of DM. So if we've got our direct mail here, we've added in our seed lists, for example, there. And we're able to then link this journey to other journeys that we also have within the solution to create conjoined campaigns that combine to form those broader customer journeys at any point. But the other thing we also have here is we've got a remainder. We're not quite sure what to do with these individuals. This is where we can do things such as use multivariate testing. And we're not just talking about, in this case, channel-specific multivariate testing, where we're testing simple things like 3 different email creatives, 3 different subject lines, 3 different banner images. The solution can very easily do that. But what it can also do as well is utilize this capability to be able to provide true cross-channel multivariate testing as well, where you can test things like email versus SMS versus do nothing, or email and SMS in concert with one another, with just email versus social. As long as you've got a parity of response type here, so every channel is returning a click or an open or or any other type of conversion, for example, here, you can test across those individual channels. So as you can probably imagine, I can spend quite a lot of time sort of taking you through this and looking at individual examples, but hopefully this is giving you a flavor of some of the possibilities that the solution is providing here as well. Now, before we move on as well, the other quick thing I wanted to talk about was when we start to look at different visualizations of data as well. So looking at things like recency, frequency, value as well. We touched upon the idea of predictive modeling and the idea of things like automated clustering. Now you'll see here I've gone back to September 2020. And you'll see here, however, as I start to click through, you can see these different bubbles. They're changing shape, they're changing size, they're moving around the screen. And this is giving us that automated clustering approach as in a visual way based upon recency, frequency, and monetary value, so RFM or RFV, depending upon which side of the Atlantic you sit. But all of these can very easily, in exactly the same way as I did earlier when I jumped from our analytics into our journey planning, it's just a right click and I can call up this context menu and jump off the different areas of the solution very quickly and easily. So I even could have actually started my analysis from here as well. But all of this is underpinned, as we saw earlier on, by numerous different dashboards as well, but also by true cross-channel attribution capabilities as well. Now, this is where the solution has 7 of the most popular marketing attribution models actually built in. And you'll see the specific models in the drop-down list I've got open on the screen here. But what this is allowing organizations to do is to step outside of channel-specific attribution, where an email platform may only have knowledge of what's happening within email. App is only able to see what's happening within an app. And the same when we talk about different advertising channels as well. It's allowing us to step outside of that and actually have a complete view of attribution right across the entire customer journey and the entire level of customer engagement as well. But because we have all of the different models within here, we can use things like first touch attribution to understand the best sort of channels to engage with people initially. What's that initial hook to get them talking to us as an organization? Last touch, where we want to look at things like what's the tipping point to get them to convert. And then there's all of the different multi-touch algorithms as well that can be used, all of these can be used standalone or in conjunction with one another to build up specific attribution models, different approaches, depending upon what you're looking to attribute. It could be anything from purchases that we have here, through to things like click-throughs, through to different response types, through to different spend metrics. It could be absolutely anything that you want to work with within here as well. Now, all of these great things, this is all fantastic. All of these things that you've sort of seen so far as we go through the session are all underpinned by data. And none of this can be achieved without actually having access to clean and accurate data. But all of this is provided, like I said, through the underlying customer data platform. And if we take a look here, this is really what we're starting to look to create. We're starting to build out golden record here, where we have persistent identifiers that don't rely on channel-specific IDs, such as an email address or a phone number or a cookie or a device ID, for example. Complete traceability of all of the data sources as they come in, linking all of the individual channel-specific identifiers back to that global unique ID or that persistent ID, keeping track of all of the different relationships that people may have, whether that's in a B2C space, let's say things like householding, or if we look at B2B, where we're starting to understand things like regional office to territory office to head office, for example, managing all of those different relationships, but also acting as a central point for the management and the persistence across the organization of all of the different preferences linked to those individual channels as well. But again, at the push of a single button, everything that was also being developed, because we have all of this traceability and the robustness of the underlying platform, it's things like this: single click subject access reporting, no more IT trawling through systems trying to find data. The solution's able to tell you absolutely everything you need to understand. Date time stamped, can understand where changes were made, when, why, how, who, for example, different survey responses, and then all of the transactions, on and on and on. Now, I know that for this session today, it's only a short overview and we are starting to get short on time. But hopefully this has given you a little bit of an idea around some of the things that the solution is actually able to provide and how it's able to aid different organizations. And saying that, I know that everyone on the webinar today is going to have a lot of their own use cases, questions, and specific ideas, different things that they want to sort of dig into in more detail. And saying that, I just wanted to actually extend an invitation to anyone that does have those questions or queries, wants to take a closer look in more detail, get in touch with myself, the rest of the team at Upland BlueVenn, and you can use the details on screen to set up a sort of a more bespoke session where we can dig into the specifics of your organization's challenges in more detail. Now, I've also noticed that we've actually had a couple of quick questions come in as well. And unfortunately, because we are actually running short of time, I'm going to be picking those up on a one-to-one basis, and we will be responding to those very shortly over email. So with that said, I hope this has been a really valuable session for you, and I hope you will have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us. Bye-bye.